Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everybody. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another installment in the Q&R and Scenic Valley Railroad build. At the end of the previous installment, I think I might have alluded to continuing with the trestle this week, and I must apologize if I misled anybody. That was not my intention. It's just that my video editing at the moment is several months behind construction, and I don't necessarily always remember the exact order I did everything in. And when I look at my raw footage, I see that there are still a couple more installments to go before I work on the main helixes. So for this installment, I have a whole lot of miscellaneous bits and pieces to get caught up with on the second level. So let's now head out into the workshop and get to work. Here is the plan for attaching the upper helix to the lower one. I've got multiple thicknesses of plywood here. I've got two thicknesses of 1/2 inch on the top helix and a 3/4 inch plate below it. The reason for that is that this helix will have to be divided horizontally for delivery because it will be too tall to go through the client's doorways. So the idea being that these post and beam systems will stay as part of the lower helix, and then I can put screws in to join them in situ. And by having an inch at the top and then 3/4 at the bottom, I can use 1 5/8 screws, and I can put them from whichever side I can get the drill in more easily, whether it be at the top or the bottom. So I'm reasonably happy that that method will work. Now what I have to do is get this first piece positioned accurately and then work back from there, back down through the benchwork that I'm building at the moment to that distant wall. So let me quietly get on with that, and I'll be right back. Well, I've cut all the rest of those legs, even though I'm not ready to install them now. The reason for doing it is that I need to make a jig on the saw. In order to make sure they all end up exactly the same length, I have clamped this block of wood against the fence. And of course it's important to make sure you don't push them up too hard. You just got to gently nudge them up against it so you don't move the block. And also make sure no sawdust gets caught in there. But obviously with that block there, I can't use this for cutting long pieces. So that's why I needed to get everything cut now so I can remove the block. Well, the back grade is now done. Everything is permanently attached all the way along. Yes, I know I've forgotten to remove the end clamp. Next job is to get the front grade in, but before I can do that I have to go inside and figure out exactly how far back the track is where it crosses this joist here. And once I have that, I can calculate the angle of exit from the helix and make that spiral piece that goes in next. Well, the helix exit is now done. This bit here is a bit awkward. I had to make that up as I go along, and of course I did have to cut this piece down because it was too high. This benchwork out there in the middle of nowhere is still a couple of inches too long. I deliberately did that so that I have some tolerance, I have some leeway as to where the trestle goes. I did the same on the other end. So now that this is in the correct place, I can just put a level across between the two ends, get it to the right grade, and then I know that the trestle will fit. I don't need to get it out here at all, not just yet anyway. So let me go away and calculate this, and I'll be right back. Well, the front grade is now also in. I didn't have as much leeway as I thought I did. I ended up having to put in another short piece of 2% here, but I was able to get this area of about 4 feet down to somewhat less than 1%, which is where the client is going to be switching his local train. Hopefully his cars don't roll on that grade. We might end up having to install some kind of a brake system. At this end I had to notch the benchwork just to get it a little bit below grade. That was because I had forgotten that I needed to put this step in where I go with the thick road bed. Anyway, it's still fairly early in the day. Haven't decided yet whether I'm going to continue and get on with something else, or if I'm just going to go in and do my inside work. Well, this morning I have added all the safety fences, both at the top of the Helix and in this area that runs round above it. I've also had a good clean up. I swept up 4 bags of sawdust this morning and dusted off the road bed. What I want to do this afternoon is plot all the track centres, and then tomorrow, after the dust has had time to settle, I will wipe off all the sub road bed again tomorrow and then lay the foam rubber. I want to get that done before I start adding backdrops, because where they come forward to break from one diorama to the next, it'll make it a lot more difficult to plot the track and lay the road bed. I'm not going to actually lay the track just yet, because I run the risk of damaging it when I'm installing the backdrops. But if I can get everything plotted today, that'll be a good afternoon of progress. Well, I've now marked out all the track locations on this deck except for the track that goes across the trestle. I need to get the trestle out here, get that mounted in the right place before I can calculate that. I set up this piece of Helix just temporarily, just to get the track centre lines coming off it in the right place. And I've measured all the bridges just to make sure I've got the correct track centres across them, because they vary somewhat. I haven't plotted the crossovers, I just plotted the parallel lines between them. I will just lay straight road bed across them, and then I'll come back with actual turnouts and get them positioned accurately. My method with all the gentle curves is to clamp a pair of bricks equidistant from the centre of the curve, and then hold my 5-foot aluminium straight edge and just gently flex it by pushing my finger in the middle. That doesn't give a circular curve, it gives basically an approximation of 2 easements that join in the middle. And I've plotted it all the way around to the end of bench work here. I don't know quite what happens here. I have to build a peninsula first. Well, all the road bed has now been laid all the way around all 3 main lines. I started in this corner for no better reason than that's where the supplier road bed happened to be. And it took me slightly over an hour to put down 38 pieces, each 4.5 feet long. Well, I have now got the roadbed line plotted all the way through the trestle site, all the way to the top of the lower helix. So the trestle is now in the right place horizontally. Before I can continue, I have to cut off the end of the sub roadbed. See, I've marked it here and again over here, and then I can drop it down to the right height and then build up the legs with plywood scraps underneath the trestle bends. So let me get on with that, and I'll check in with you again later. For the concrete footings that all the trestle bends are going to rest on, I found in my box of parts this bag of accurately milled 1/2-inch wood cubes, and I'm going to use those. I don't know what I bought them for, but the pack says there is 8 parts in there. Unfortunately, I used 2 for some reason, so there's only 6 left. So I'm going to make up the difference out of length of basswood. I'm just going to cut that as accurately as I can with a mitre box. It probably won't be exactly the same as those, but not to worry, I'll just hide the extra ones at the back. and they're going to be basically buried in vegetation anyway. And I'd always wanted to add much larger concrete footings for these front corners, that one and that one. So I'm going to carve these out of a piece of 3/4 inch clear pine, simply because I just have that in my workshop. So let's go inside and do that on the belt sander. Well, here is my method for making the large concrete footings. I have a block of wood clamped at an angle to the table of my belt sander. I've taken a piece of 1 inch square clear pine and I just slide it in against the wood until all 4 sides are sanded off to the same size, and there we have the top piece. It's not perfectly accurate, but it's enough for the location, bearing in mind that it's going to be down at ankle height and mostly buried in vegetation anyway. So that's one done. I'm going to turn it around and get the other one done from the other end of the same stick. So there is one of the larger footings, and there is the other one. I don't know how long they need to be yet, but I'm going to cut them off with extra length, and I can always bury them in the scenery to the depth I need them. Yep. So now it's time to get the trestle mounted back in the gap. I have already cut off the sub road bed at both ends, so the gap is now about 1/8 of an inch longer. I will have to lengthen it again when I add the abutments, but for now it will fit, and I just got to get it hung at the right height. Now I need both hands to do that, so let me get organised and I'll be right back. Well, here you can see my method of getting the trestle suspended in exactly the right location. I have taped it to the underside of my 4-foot level. I have spacers in both ends, one piece there and another one right there. Those blocks of wood are exactly the same thickness as the road bed that I'm going to be using leading up to the trestle. So now, with it dangling the right height above the floor, I can now build up footings under each bed. The 8 in the 2 main towers and the 2 on this single bed here. This will also require a wooden tunnel over the top of the low-level route to the staging yard, but I will arrange that once I've got these 8 done. So don't go away, I'll check in with you again later. Well, I've completed all the blocking under the 8 main legs. It doesn't have to look pretty, it only has to be stable and accurate. So now I've got to remove the trestle and then glue everything together where it sits right now. And the final step will be to screw the whole thing down to the base. I knew I didn't need that whole area decked out, but since I didn't know exactly where the trestle was going to be, it made sense to put a full piece in there. I think I mentioned that earlier in the construction as to why I did that. In order to get this area to work, I need to build some kind of baffle over and beside the lower track. So I've got a test train right now consisting of the longest car and the highest car. So I've got this 89-foot high cube box car and a well car with 2 high cube containers on it, just so I can make sure that everything is going to miss. Now this strip of plywood that is positioned temporarily here is the same width as the spacers that I'm using for the Helix. I'm going to draw around it, and then I'm going to cut away the foam road bed and it's going to sit in there. And of course I have to cut it in 2 pieces because this is a benchwork joint as well. So let me get this piece cut aside and then I'll be right back and see what I have to add to it. Well, that is about all I can do today. It's still early, but I have met my target. There's a few areas where I've still got glue clamping up. I don't want to disturb it. I still need to finish framing this corner and join that horizontal piece up with the diagonal. So I've got to make some kind of a bracket there, but I'll do that tomorrow. At least the trestle is positioned. That's what I set out to do. the footings for the trestle are now installed. I managed to get it to rest properly on all 10 of them. 8 down here, 2 up there. I needed some sanding and some shimming. And you probably notice in the back here I had to extend the platform because it wasn't quite the right size. I've also got the supports in for the abutments, one over this side and one here. I may still need to cut the supports back. I've cut this support back here so that I can add some more stonework back there, but I don't know if I've cut enough. And also I may need to do the same at this end, so I'm not going to glue the abutments permanently in place just yet. But I'm going to call the trestle done as far as getting it in the right place, so I can now take it inside where it's not going to get damaged. Well, that's all for this week. Hope you enjoyed this video presentation. The next task on this project, I believe, was the installation of backdrops for the diorama level. Of course, with the way the railroad is constructed, the backdrops on that level have to be an integral part of the diorama boxes. So that has to be done next before I can continue upwards. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be releasing that next week. It might be another layout design instead. So I'm just going to sign off here, and I hope to see you again next week. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.